Welcome to Beyond the Barclay. My name is Jez Davies. This week I'm joined with Connor Southwell. Hi Connor, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming on once again.
No, a pleasure and delighted to be on. It's been a long time in the making, hasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it has. Just for the audience that are unaware of what you do for a living, if you'd just like to introduce yourself, what you do, and your connection with Norwich City.
Yeah, so I'm Connor Southwell. I was a season ticket holder for about 10 years or so at Carrow Road in the River End, and then since 2019 I've been working for the Pink 'Un, and since 2022 I've been, I think, Chief Norwich City reporter there. So for all of the titles, Eastern Daily Press, Norwich Evening News, anywhere that you would have read, hopefully some quotes from managers and players and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's what I do.
Fantastic. And I suppose sort of diving straight into the questions then, really. I mean, how did you first get involved with the Pink 'Un, and what's been your journey there? I mean, how did you start off in the football journalism? Well,
Yeah, it's been a bit unconventional, really. Bit of a mad journey. One that sort of went a lot quicker than I anticipated. I think when I was about 16, and you begin to sort of think about what you want to do with your life and maybe where you want to go. And I was just loved football, loved playing it. I was intelligent enough to know that I was at that stage not going to be a professional footballer.
yeah.
So then it turned into sort of what other routes you can go down in the game, and of course there's various ones. You could go down a coaching route, which is one that I considered, and I probably would have quite liked that if I'd have done that, to be completely honest. There's obviously like the physio routes, the recruitment routes. There's loads of routes in now. You can obviously do sort of marketing and sales stuff, but for me it was immediately sort of media that I wanted to do. I sort of had an interest in drama growing up, and those two things were pretty easily connected. So then it was about working out how I did that and how I got there. And so I sort of thought about the end point first, which was probably this job. Really, I wasn't specifically thinking I'm going to work for the Pink 'Un in this role, but it was, covering football on a daily basis, and then you work your way sort of down from that. So it was at the time I was just beginning A levels, so it was right. I need to get these A levels, and then I need to do this at university, and then after 3 years I need to do this undergrad course, and then hopefully I'll be in a position where I can then go and get a job and doing what I want to do. Fortunately, it happened a little bit quicker for me. I did a lot of stuff that was valuable experience. I did some stuff for the Talk Norwich City guys. I did primarily some stuff for My Football Writer, which was, really massive. I did some other stuff as well, non-football stuff, voluntary stuff that gave me a really good sort of education in what it looked like. And then when I was 19, a job came up at the Pink 'Un, which I wasn't going to apply for, to be completely honest, because I thought I've got no experience. I'm not qualified. I've got nothing behind my name really, other than sort of the stuff that I'd done in fan media, but kind of sort of came to a place where I was like, well, I need to apply for it to experience that process of, applying for something, maybe potentially getting an interview and sort of experiencing what that is like for the type of role that I want to do. Unfortunately enough, I got the job, and from there it's been an absolute whirlwind. I'm still not convinced I really know what I'm doing 5 years in, but you muddle on and you muddle through, and that's been my journey really. It's different for different people. I was incredibly fortunate, and I worked incredibly hard, and I absolutely love it. So I love it probably as much now as I did on day one, which is probably a good sign.
No, good. And I think anyone that's got that kind of job where you, as you say, you really enjoy it, and it gives you that sort of motivation, I suppose, to get up and do it is all good. And I think so. I mean, a couple of sort of follow up questions on that. Then, I mean, what university did you attend to do your media studies?
Yeah, it was UEA actually. So I could have gone elsewhere, and I could have done like a sports journalism specific course, but I think at the time part of the consideration was that I was trying to and I had a few good things going in sort of the Norwich space, and sort of the My Football Writer stuff, and had some sort of developed some good connections and whatnot, and also I wanted to stay at home in terms of my family, and had sort of stuff keeping me here. And if you've got a good university on your doorstep, then it's important, I think, to utilise that. And UEA is a good university, albeit all the challenges that it's going through at the moment. So I did media studies, and then the plan was to do a postgrad course in journalism. So to be a little bit more specific, but I only ended up doing a year there because the job came up, and then it was a bit of an easy decision really. It was, do I stay on this with the basis of, coming out with a place where you've got a qualification but you haven't got a job, or do you actually cut corners and just go for the job and maybe save the education? So I went for that option, because I kind of knew that this is kind of what I wanted to do, and then it was just a case really for me of cutting corners. So, I was incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful to get that opportunity at 19, which is, incredibly young, I think, to be doing what I was doing at the time. And looking back, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing then. So grateful that they persevered with me, really.
No, definitely. I mean, that is going to be my follow-up question then. Is there anyone that you'd want to give a shout out to that's really helped you in your career, or equally, is there anyone that you look up to sort of within that realm, that you sort of not aspire to be? I don't mean it like that, but we've all got these people in life, right, that we kind of do aspire to be. But I mean, is there anyone that on both those counts that you'd want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, on the first point, Gary Gowers, my football writer, did tremendous amounts for me. I mean, I was 16, 17 when I went to him and sort of asked if I could write, and I didn't really know how to structure an article or what I wanted to say, or I probably had lots to say about Norwich, but not the best idea of how to say it or in which best way to say it. And he was very good with me in terms of giving me a platform and giving me time and helping me. So him first and foremost. And I always say to people, when people come to me and maybe ask for advice, or they want to know how to get into it, I always say, that's a really good place to start, and he's a really good person to give you that space. And he gave me an opportunity as an 18-year-old to go and interview Stuart Webber for an hour. I'm not sure many people who would turn to an 18-year-old and give them that opportunity. So I owe Gary a hell of a lot, and he's a brilliant guy. And my football writer generally is a really good place, and fan media more generally. We could probably a different podcast for a different place, but I think its emergence and how important it's become in the football space. And I think we're incredibly fortunate in Norfolk and as Norwich fans to have such a rich tapestry of fan media and mainstream media. Radio Norfolk guys do a brilliant job as well, as Jez. So it's a brilliant place, I think, to learn. And then in terms of aspiring, really, I think, I got told quite early on, I can't remember who by now, really, ironically, but it was about, make sure you read people who are better than you constantly, and make sure that you take bits that you like from their pieces, and that's something that I do now. I still read a lot of people who are better than me, and there's loads, so it's a long list. But I don't want to embarrass him, because I work with him now, and I'm lucky enough to call him a colleague. But Paddy was one of the people that I read regularly, and he's been fantastic throughout really my time, just in terms of having that experienced soundboard to hand constantly, and he's kind of guided me through. So he's been brilliant in that regard, but also is for me one of the best local journalists in terms of writers. I won't blow his trumpet any more than that, but I think he's excellent at what he does. Obviously Michael Bailey was a big one as well. I think he was really innovative with the way that he covered Norwich, and again been fantastic for me on my journey and helping me in various bits of advice and whatnot. So those were the two sort of in the Norwich space. Obviously, Rob Butler at Radio Norfolk, Chris Gorham in a different way sort of gave me more general advice. So all of those guys I think I probably looked up to, like most people sort of trying to get in, and you try and look at what they do and how they've done it and how they got into it and that sort of thing. So all of those guys have been really, really important for me, I think, on my journey and kind of helping me shape that, I guess.
All right, brilliant. That's fantastic. I think you mentioned it there, the wealth of football media that we've got within Norwich City. I think some other clubs probably aren't so lucky, but I've had Rob and Chris have both been really really nice to sort of come onto the podcast as well, and that's something that they mentioned as well. And they talk very very kindly about they call them the Pinkham guys, which is obviously yourself and Paddy and Sam, is it? Sam?
Yes, yeah.
And I think on that as well, I think one thing I was going to mention is during the COVID times, I think that was a really big massive part of how you, what's the word I'm looking for here, how you sort of almost portrayed the games, because we weren't there, a lot of the fans weren't there, and I think yourself, Michael Bailey, and maybe definitely the Talk Norwich City boys, the videos you used to do sort of pre-post match were vital really, because we weren't getting that interaction as fans. We were obviously made to sit indoors, and I think I'll always say thank you to yourself and to Michael Bailey and to the Norwich City boys for that, because I think that was a vital part of what we needed at that time.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it was actually a really difficult period. I found it a really difficult period professionally, because, like you say, there was probably, there's probably 2 points to this. I guess the first point, that actually being in the stadium, I constantly felt really guilty about it. And that's not a great position to sort of start in, but it wasn't particularly enjoyable, because you know that there were people at home who would give their right arm in some cases to probably be sat where you were sat and to watch those games. But as an experience, it was some elements of it were really interesting. So the ability to hear how players communicate, how coaches communicate, how referees communicate, all of that stuff was really interesting. But the actual games themselves weren't great. Obviously, you're sat in empty stadiums. That wasn't great, and the whole sort of period was one that I was really glad to leave in the past. And like you say, I think we've probably all felt that extra responsibility and that extra pressure's maybe the wrong word, but definitely the extra sort of expectation and extra need probably for us to communicate in a way that was relevant and that painted the picture and all of those type of things. So it was a really confusing period, I think, and watching Norwich win a league title under those circumstances was bizarre. And I remember when they secured promotion and they were trying to celebrate on the pitch, and it just sort of ended up that some of the players started booting balls over the main stand at Carrow Road. That was the way they celebrated, because all of it was obviously for very good reason, but it was incredibly sanitized and just didn't have the same emotion that we saw in games. And a lot of that period I spelt feeling incredibly guilty, and it wasn't enjoyable. And thankfully, I think that first game where fans were back, it was pre-season friendly, I think, against Gillingham potentially. That was incredible. And then obviously the first game back against Liverpool, so that was really nice. But it was an odd period, I think, for everybody, but certainly to do the job that we did. I mean, I saw some of my colleagues more than I saw my family members over 2 years, because those were the conditions that we were working in. But incredibly odd times, and thankfully and hopefully one that we don't have to replicate any time soon.
I hope not, definitely not. So moving on this, what's your most rewarding part of covering Norwich City for a living?
I think probably the people that you meet and the connections that you make through that. I think that, as you say, that ability to maybe be the gateway from people that, I do the live blogs on a match day, which is sort of kick by kick updates, and you see people from all over the world joining that. And I think it's that connection you make with those people first and foremost. You don't know them from Adam, and you only really know them through a username on the screen, but I think you do connect with them. And being that, or having that ability to watch a game unfold in front of you and be able to almost be their eyes and their ears, I think that's that's quite a rewarding thing to do. In a bizarre way, it's not, obviously it's a different type of rewarding to maybe what other people do and much more important jobs, but it's one that I really enjoy. I think that ability to try and get answers for people, for fans who want to know things about why a certain player's been picked and whatnot, that's really important. So all of those things I think are incredibly rewarding. I love the job. I love most aspects of it, not all of them, but definitely most of them. And as I said earlier, it's one that I'm in love with now as I was 5 years ago, and that is for me the most sort of important part, because if I don't feel that way about this, then I think it's very difficult to serve or feel like you serve people in the way that we try to do, and try to make sure we cover all things as much and as best as we can, which is up for debate as to how we do that, and I'm sure lots of people have disagreed with stuff that we've done in the past, and but that's sort of the way that you try and do it. You try and put those people that you're trying to get questions answered for at the front of it, and that is sort of what I've tried to guide me over the last 5 years, constantly. I remember sort of taking this job and people telling me you won't be able to be a fan in the same way, but actually I think it's a really useful tool to have, because there are times where you can put that hat on and actually what would a fan think about this, and sometimes you have fans that you can ask as well. So all of that stuff for me is really rewarding and really enjoyable.
I think we're going to have to ask the next question then, because it sort of leads in quite nicely to what you just said. So do you find that difficult to balance your professional responsibilities with being a fan of the club?
Uh, yeah, yes and no. I think in terms of like, I think I've probably got quite good at separating it, to
Right.
be honest, because it is different, and I think the closer, and as you said, Jess, you've worked in football, so maybe you can relate to this a little
Yeah.
bit. But the closer you get to things, I think the easier it is to be a little bit more distant and to look at things through a slightly different lens. And of course, it does change, and you have to change the way you think about football. But I think I was always quite good at maybe not being that emotional,
Yeah.
and maybe thinking about things more rationally and whatnot. And look, there are times, of course, where that emotion is useful, and you can lean on that in a really positive way, and it can make what you do and your writing and your work a little bit better and a little bit more human. I think at times, I think if you're always robotic and you're always non-emotional, then that is sometimes quite difficult to connect with. So, for example, when I do the sort of video verdicts that I do after games, which are 40 minutes after the final whistle, and they can be emotional at times, and I'm okay with that. I try and make sure that those are, that's not the case every week, because it would be exhausting for me and it would be exhausting for the viewer.
Yeah.
But I think at certain times it's useful to lean into. So I wouldn't say I've totally disconnected it, but I think I've probably got better at knowing when to lean into that sort of fan feeling, and maybe when to sort of distance it and when to sort of let rationale use it. So I think that probably comes with time in this job, I would say, more than anything else.
No, definitely. You're right in what you say. I think there's that switch, isn't there? I think Chris
Mm.
Gorham alluded to it on his on the chat I had with him. It's almost like that. Everyone's got it built into them, but there's that professional switch that when you're there working, you're right. You have to cover it as you see it, but also sometimes be a little bit more pragmatic, I suppose, with your approach. But I think I think it's interesting you touched on the video, the vlogs that you do, because that's the landscape's changed in the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years, because 15 years ago we would never have perhaps even thought about that, because obviously the way that the world is nowadays. And I suppose the pinking of I remember when I was young, going to the games at the age of 14, 15, and I'd go and buy a copy of the Pinkin after the game, and that was a sort of a separate publication to the EDP back then, and people a lot older than me will probably remember that as well. And I think sort of it's times move on, and I think nowadays, I suppose my question really is I think, do you think the Pinkin have adapted with the times?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm still here and in a job, so I
Good.
think as long as that's the case, I think, yeah. I mean, we're incredibly lucky. We know that. I mean, we see it when we go around the country, and we're lucky that we can take 4 staff members to game full time that cover Norwich City full time. That is incredibly rare when you look around the country, and speak to some colleagues in the Northwest or in London, and some of these clubs don't even have a local reporter, let alone have 3 full-time ones that are dedicated specifically on one club. So
Yeah.
we know we're incredibly fortunate to have that resource, and obviously geographically it helps, because Norwich are the only not the only, obviously there's Kingsley in town as well, but only sort of professional club in the football league. So it allows us to probably put more resource into that. But yeah, it's something that I think we're always conscious to do, and I think we're always conscious as to how we can keep evolving and keep trying to make things a little bit more accessible for audiences, and sort of trying to get across all platforms and whatnot. And that, of course, changes sort of my role and Paddy's role and Sam's role as well, because it means that, no longer are you just, as maybe would have been the case 20 years ago. I know Paddy speaks about this when he sort of started the job, and it was just about, well, can you write? And now that's not the case. Now it's, can you record videos? Can you host podcasts? Can you speak in a setting like this for 2 minutes, unaided? So those are slightly different challenges that I think you learn sort of more to do. And of course, in the industry that you're in, you take on more as well. And that means, can you edit? Can you sub edit yourself? And that's very, very difficult. Probably one of the most difficult aspects of the job, I think. So all of that, juggling all of that and spinning all of those plates is difficult, but it's necessary now. And because, as you say, the audiences have changed so much, and it's so much more than, as you said, just buying sort of a paper after a game now. It's bigger and probably more instant than that as well. So yeah, all of that is a challenge, but it's one that I really enjoy. I like the fact that I get to do different things. I think if I was probably pigeonholed to just writing or just video, I think you probably would be a little bit like, excuse the pun, but a bit of a canary in a cage. I think probably itching to do other stuff. So I love the fact that I can do different elements to it. I love obviously the writing side of it, and that will always be sort of my first love, but the fact that you can sort of express yourself in other ways I think is really important. So yeah, the answer is I hope that's the case, and I hope it will continue to be the case. And as I said, we're incredibly lucky, I think, in the position that we're in compared to sort of other local other local coverage of football clubs around the UK, which maybe isn't as strong as in some cases, but not everywhere. So we're incredibly fortunate, and yeah, we know that.
Brilliant. So what's been the most memorable story or feature you've worked on about Norwich?
I think it's got to be the American investment story with Mark Attanasio and breaking that story. That was an incredible week, really. And again, it was one that I worked very closely on with Paddy. And to get that out there in the context and whatnot. I mean, we worked on that story for about 2 weeks for sort of background and piecing it all together and finding various bits out and maybe avoiding a little bit of a struggle at the end to actually getting it published. But it was, that by far I think is the most, is probably the biggest and hardest story that I've worked on in my time so far. Obviously there are other bits in that. I'm incredibly proud of, you mentioned the COVID period. We did almost like I can't remember how long it was now, about half an hour, I think 45 minutes sort of documentary almost on Norwich City's title winning campaign, and spoke to a lot of people in that. We did a poem that was narrated by Stephen Fry, and that was a really, I was really proud of that piece of work that we put together. But there are so many examples and different stories and whatnot that I'm incredibly proud of. I mean, in terms of games, I sort of peaked quite early because my first game in this job was that win over Manchester City.
Oh wow!
Which was incredible. I actually missed the first goal because at that time now I've sort of picked up the knack of when to type and when you need to be watching the game. I didn't have that on day one. So when the corner came in and Kenny McLean flicked it into the back of the net, I was still typing about, I think, how the corner was created, which I couldn't even tell you now. But that day, and you speak about sort of the non-emotional side of it. I was, such a whirlwind to me. I hadn't really reflected on what they'd done until I was walking sort of away from the office I think that was a late kickoff, wasn't it? So it was quite late. It might have been close to midnight, and I was sort of beginning the walk home, and it was only then I was like, wow, in terms of what they've just done. So yeah, I peaked quite early, but yeah, there's been loads of highlights, and as I say, I've loved every second of it, even if the results on the pitch haven't been the greatest.
No, that's it. I mean, we've had some really good times, haven't we? And I think it's that Man City game in particular. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was. I always talk about with the podcast sort of, as sort of focuses on. We talk to a lot of fans, and the question comes up. What was your most memorable or fan experience, or what was the best atmosphere? Is sometimes gets the answer of the Man City game, because it just was, and it was. You're right. The whole sort of story around it about the fact that we were 3-1 up, then it was 3-2 with Rodri scoring quite near the end, and they had those 3 or 4 shots right near the end, didn't they? Which Krul did well to save, I think, or they put wide or whatever. But that, I suppose, the point I'm getting to is, I think a lot of fans resonate with that because of how good that felt to beat that team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's still some sights I saw on that day. I remember people in the City stand on their feet, applauding, roaring as a slide tackle was made in front of me. It was incredible. It was a day I would have never forgotten anyway, I think, in any context. But for it to be the first one that I did was it was a nice introduction. Sadly, it's probably as good as it got that season. I think the next week we were at Turf Moor and Norwich got beat, so that was a bit more sobering. But yeah, it was an incredible way to sort of kick off what has been an incredible 5 years. And like you say, I mean, just the the fact that they did it. I remember being sat in the press conference before actually, and there was a bit of an injury crisis at the time, wasn't there? And Norwich ended up with a little bit of a makeshift, certainly defence, but probably throughout the whole team. And I remember sort of Daniel saying, right, this player's out, and in your head you go, right, okay, well that's okay because this person could come in, and then he'd say that one was out, and then right, okay, so there's this person potentially, and then they were out as well. So yeah, the whole story around that. And I remember sort of speaking pre-game and thinking, wow, well, if Norwich get beat 5 here, that might be okay. Just sort of take that and move on. So the fact, they won it, and in the way that they won it as well, it was euphoric, and as you say, a day that I'll never forget.
No, 100%. So moving quite nicely on then. So what do you think makes Norwich City fan base so special?
Yeah, I think people speak about the loyalty. I think that's true to an extent. I think also the community feel of it, the diversity of it as well, I think is incredible. There's I used to go to football with my older sister, and had lots of great experiences. And I think the fact that you see so many different profiles and demographics and ages at Carrow Road is incredible. You don't see that at every ground, and Norwich is incredibly fortunate as a football club, and we're incredibly fortunate as a county to have that diversity and to have those sort of different demographics that's all united in one cause, which is that they want Norwich City to win, and that's an incredibly powerful thing. I think clearly the loyalty is a big thing as well, but the fact that very rarely in Norfolk, more so maybe these days because they've been in the Championship a little while, but even now really I don't, when I walk around the city centre, which isn't that often, but Norfolk more generally, you don't really see any other shirts. You see kids wearing Norwich City shirts, and that I think is brilliant. And the fact that it gets passed down from generations to generations is brilliant. I mean, I talk to my grandparents about Norwich City. I talk to now my son about Norwich City. He's only 5, and I'm not trying desperately hard not to force him down that road. But it's those connections that I think that is really special about this football club, and everyone's got stories like that. So. I think it's a football club that is brilliant, and not all football clubs are in the community and relevant in their communities and active parts of their community. So I think the fact that Norwich City are, and that's been sort of untinkered with throughout sort of Premier League eras and bad times and good times, I think that's incredibly powerful. And I think by and large everyone's very, very proud of what the football club represents, even if obviously that goes a little bit up and down in terms of what they do on the pitch.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think you're right. I think the Community Sports Foundation do a superb job. Something we talked about quite a lot previously, but I think it's always worth a mention because the work they do at the Nest for a start. Introducing the ladies team, which again is another superb avenue, I suppose, to explore, because that's an ever growing form of the game as well. And I think just what they do for the local community in the sense of a lot of the sort of how do I put it, like the disabilities and stuff that they tend to look after. I think they've got a Down syndrome team as well that play regularly, and it's the power wheelchair football team as well. So you're right, it's covering such a wide range of people that wouldn't necessarily perhaps have these opportunities, and I think that's something to be really proud of.
Yeah, completely. And like you say, I've seen firsthand the work in particular the CSF do, but other groups within that as well. Duncan's Club. I mean, all of these massively important, valuable, brilliant stuff. And the fact that is delivered, if not by the football club, then through the football club, and using the football club as that sort of tool to connect people is brilliant. And Duncan Club is a really good example of how you can use football and how you can use Norwich City as a really important connecting tool. And I think that probably is the best thing about the sport, really, how many people like, how universal it is. I think the fact that you and I can walk into any room and we could probably find someone who likes football. They might not support Norwich, they might not be that clued up on it, but you can hold a conversation. And look, some of the best sort of relationships and connections that I've made in my life have been through football. So I think that sort of shows how powerful it is, and I'm sure that's the case for obviously a lot of people listening, and for yourself as well, Jez.
No, absolutely. I think there's sort of a bit of a side story as well. Really, is for me is as a lot of Norwich fans tend to do, we tend to show our colours, don't we? And what nice colours, bright colours they are. And what I mean by that is when we go on holiday and stuff. So I've been, with the wife abroad, so to Turkey and various other places, and I always wear my Norwich shirt. And it's bizarre the sort of fellow Norwich fans that you meet in these sort of wide range of places. We just seem to pop up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen some Norwich fans in some really bizarre places, and it's remarkable. And like you say, it's because they're so easily identifiable, isn't it? You look at that yellow and green, and you can see someone across a beach or in a random place, and yeah, it's brilliant when that happens. It's as I say, there's always a route to Norfolk or Norwich, always wherever you go. There's always something or someone, and that's really great.
Absolutely. What's so moving on then? So who's been your favourite player to interview and why?
Oh, that's a good question.
Thanks.
Who, who's been my favourite?
You don't have to. I'm not nailing you down to one either. So if you've got like a few, then please feel free to mention a
Yeah,
few.
I mean, Kenny's really good
Yeah.
in terms of like a talker. He's brilliant. That's what you want when you work in newspapers. You want people who talk a lot, so that's always good. Obviously, Temu Puki, I always really enjoyed speaking to him.
Yeah.
I put a bit of a curveball out there. I interviewed Todd Cantwell a couple of times. I always found him really good in terms of like he's a real deep thinker, I think, about life, and you always got quite good answers from him, quite sort of in-depth answers, sort of non-cliched answers, and I always found him quite philosophical, and I'm not going to use the word misunderstood, but he was always really good as well. There's been loads. Grant Hanley's really good. There's been far too many to mention, but yeah, of the current group, I probably speak to Kenny the most,
Right.
because he's so good at it, and
Yeah.
I think he probably is the best, I would say, that I've had from memory, unless I'm missing someone obvious, which I don't think that I am. Tim Krul was always really good.
Yeah.
This current squad actually has got quite a few players in there who are good to interview, and to be fair, all of them. Sometimes you can speak to, I don't know if Rob or Chris, you asked this to them. I'm sure they've got some horror stories in terms of managers or players maybe not liking questions or not being that personable. I genuinely don't have many. I've got a few, but I don't have many. And I think that is probably sort of a testament to maybe the type of people that Norwich City have recruited and tried to build a squad around in the last few years. Even, as I say, if maybe the results and sometimes even the coaches haven't gone as well as anyone would have liked.
No, and you're right. Those questions were asked to both Rob and Chris, and I think one of the things that sort of come out of that was if they had a difficult interview, did they sort of know that I'm trying to think of the right way of phrasing this question. Did they know that they had the sort of a difficult interview, and were they more pertinent to perhaps ask the more difficult questions to the interviewee because they knew not only to get the content that they required, or was it just because they knew at that time that they needed to get those questions out there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And I think, one thing you get quite a lot in this job when Norwich aren't doing well, sorry, is, you get a lot of people sort of asking, ask the tough questions and all of this stuff. And, it's difficult because quite often you know these people as people, and you do have to balance it in terms of you have a relationship to maintain as well, because if you pee someone off, for want of a better word, then you're still going to have to speak to them next week and ask some questions next week. So you do have to manage that aspect of it, and also, like you say, it's sometimes about reading it. If a manager, for example, has just lost the game 3-0 and you're asking them about their position, you've got to make sure you do that in a certain way, and that you do it in a way that is quite human. I think you can be quite inhumane about it, and be quite direct about it. And look, sometimes that is the only route, and that's the most effective route. Absolutely. So you've got to judge the situation as much as the people sometimes. And I've had very sort of difficult interviews with Dean Smith and with David Wagner at various points, and to both of their credit, I think they were always pretty good when you asked some of those more direct questions, and when things were a little bit tense. So you've got to give them credit, I think, for sort of fronting up and answering those questions, even maybe necessarily if you didn't always agree with the answers. And I've asked plenty of questions before, and I think this is quite a difficult thing as well. And maybe Chris and Rob have spoken about this, but sometimes you ask someone a question, it gets taken as an opinion.
Yeah.
I've asked questions that I completely disagree with, that aren't my opinion, but you ask them because they're relevant and because sometimes people want to know the answer, or because it's some people's view.
Yeah.
And often that is maybe when there can be a little bit of a misunderstanding, because people can, and coaches and players can take questions as opinions when they're not that, they're just questions. And maybe that is the sort of fine line that you have to tread sometimes.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. I mean, it leads in quite nicely to the next question, I suppose, and you may have already covered it. But how do you approach covering tough moments like relegations or poor form as both a journalist and a fan?
I think something that I've always tried to do is just say things as I see it. I think that's all you can do. You can't lie to people. You can't spin a web. I think if Norwich don't play well, and I think that, I will always say that. I think it's no good to sort of sugarcoat things or to walk on eggshells. It is, because as much as those relationships are important, you've also got to put your job first, and we've got a job to do, and that's to be honest and to be truthful and to reflect what we've seen. And if that's not very good, then you've got to say it's not very good. But equally, if it is good, then you've got to say it's good as well. So it comes in both forms. Sometimes people just want to pick on the negative stuff, and I get that, because that's the way it works. But I think that's always been my approach. It's probably different for different people, but I think just be honest, just say what you see. That's often what I try and tell myself before I hit record on doing one of those verdicts after a game. It is, right, what have I seen today? What did I see? What was my view on it? And that's all you can do. And then, of course, if people disagree with you, that's fine. I've always said it's healthy to disagree, and it's good that people see games in different ways and that they have different opinions on players. That's, again, probably goes back to our earlier conversation. That's what makes the game so great. But my view is always just try to be honest about it. And certainly with those tough questions, if they've got to be asked, then you can't shirk them. You can't not ask them. It's just about, as I say, maybe doing it in a certain way, or asking it in a certain way that is in the right tone and worded in the right way, which you don't always get right.
No.
And I'm sure Chris and Rob have said that as well. Like players, we have off days. We ask bad questions. It happens. And you absolutely know when you've walked out of a bad one on your behalf. So it's just about trying to make sure that you ask the right questions at the right time, in the right tone, that are relevant, but also are necessary. So yeah, that's sort of how I try and approach it. But what I would sort of conclude this point by saying is like fans, really, those bad periods aren't the best periods for us. I know there's maybe a feeling that if Norwich are getting stuffed every week, that's good for us, and that's good for views and good for listens and good for, but that's I would say not the case. It's better for us when Norwich are winning games and when they're doing well, and that's primarily what we want them to do. And that doesn't change from sort of the fan feeling, irrespective of sort of where they are or who they're playing. I don't think I've ever sat at ground not wanting Norwich City to win a game of football, because it's primarily what I want, but also because it makes the job a lot more enjoyable.
Of course. And, I think, I'm going to sort of probably use this opportunity to cover the famous pink and message board, which I know that one of your roles is to perhaps mediate the conversations that go on there. And my question is twofold, really. I think one, I go on that board semi-regularly with my co-host. Co-host uses it as well, so we're on there. I mean, my sort of question really there is how often do you log in, and do you use the opinions on there to sort of gauge fan opinion, I suppose, and how do you utilize that medium?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The answer is I'm on it every day. I'm always sort of lurking in the background and trying to read stuff, because that's what you have to do when you mediate it. In terms of sort of fan view, I mean, it's interesting. I think probably about as much or as little as social media, really, which is you can't use everything on there as a tool and take that as what everyone thinks. But I think if there's a good topic on there, and again, this is the same as social media, if there's a good bit of debate or maybe an angle that you haven't thought of, then it can be incredibly useful. And the opinions on there, by and large, mostly, as you know, Jez, are brilliant. And it's a really important place, I think, that message board. And I have in the period that I've sort of had this sort of power's the wrong word, but the the honour, I guess, of looking after it in that sort of sense. It's always been a really important place for me, because look, there's, like you, there's plenty on there that I disagree with, but that's not the point of it. It should be a place where people can express their opinions and debate them, and to agree and disagree agreeably as well. And it's a really important space, I think. And I think the fact that it's still as strong as it is with social media, with all of the various channels that you have, is brilliant. And it's a place that we obviously really value and really are grateful that people use, because ultimately if they didn't use it, then we wouldn't have it. So it is a really important place. It can be it can be hard work sometimes. It can be difficult sometimes, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable, and it doesn't mean that we don't value it. So I think the fact that we try, and I'm on there every day monitoring stuff and reading pretty much everything, I think is maybe a reflection, hopefully, of how much we value it. I know people always want us to do more, but it is hard when you're sort of trying to spin all the various plates that we do. But it's a really important place, is the answer to your question.
No, I'd completely agree. I think not only is it a great community for sort of not only local fans, but fans that are from further afield. I mean, as I said to you at the start, I live in Hertfordshire, and it's always good for me to. I sort of have 2 or 3 various avenues that I explore to sort of get my, if you like, Norwich City fix. I'm doing that with inverted comma fingers. But the Pinkin Forum is certainly one of them, and it's, there's people on there that I think I've known for probably 15, 20 years, because either they've been on that platform or the official clubs one when that was up and running. But I think it's a really good community for people like myself that are out the county, and can sort of feel connected. But equally, there's things that have spawned on there for raising money for the community foundation, etc.
Yeah. And those are brilliant. I think there was a figure on there that I saw about £6,500. That might be wrong, so apologies if I've got that wrong. But just an incredible amount of money, and that goes back probably to our earlier conversation about community and football clubs. That isn't just in actively out there and speaking to people and all of those things. They can manifest online, and you look at some of the best things. I mean, the stuff we were involved in last year with the Norwich fan, Nathan West, who gave an interview to us, and there was a load of stuff off the back of that, and you look at the money that he raised and what came off the good that came out of that. So sometimes these online places are the best, and like you said, they're people that you haven't seen, but I couldn't imagine a Saturday without seeing or speaking to a lot of the people who are on the live blog. So or on the message board or whatever. So it's a powerful place, and I think that goes back maybe to what I felt. When you're in this job, you feel that you do feel that sort of weight of responsibility, and that again, pressure's the wrong word, because it's not a pressure. It's a nice pressure, but you feel that sort of importance of what you do, and how important it is to other people, like you say, who maybe aren't who some who are, absolutely, and they're I'm not saying they're not valuable, but definitely to those people maybe who are away from Norfolk and just trying to scramble for any sort of connection and feeling and thing about Norwich City that they can. So to be able to do that, I think is incredibly rewarding, and that's the power of message boards and social media when it's used for good, and all of these various aspects that when they're harnessed in the right way, are just brilliant places to connect with people about football and bring people together.
Definitely right. So last few questions then, Connor. What's the biggest challenge in providing content that appeals to such a wide range of Norwich City supporters?
The biggest challenge? Did you say? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. The biggest challenge. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. We have lots of debates about this. I think transfer rumours is always a challenging one, because I say it because for us it's quite easy to do transfer rumours because they always do well. People want to read them for obvious reasons, but I think that you can write them sometimes and not feel like you're selling your soul. That's very strong, but it might not always be the best part of the job. So I think the way that we've tried to do them, which is make sure they're very clearly reports as opposed to us reporting, that's probably one of the biggest challenges from a content perspective, for sure. Yeah, I would struggle in terms of other answers to that. I'm sure there are some, but in terms of the top of my head, there's none really. I think the main one is just is just making sure that things are quality. I think you can so easily in this industry, and you see it in various other places, go to produce things that maybe are of a lower quality, but you produce more of them because they do quite well. I think we try, and it's not always just us. You look at the stuff that Ben Lee does for some brilliant tactical analysis, and we've got so many great columnists. So I think we try and make sure that it's quality over quantity. And look, people will argue about that, of course, but that's what we try and do, and try and make sure that it's as wide a stuff as we can get on there, right down from the academy to the women's team. So it is a challenge in terms of covering all the things equally and fairly, and making sure that you give all of the relevant people who deserve a voice, and that's a challenge. But yeah, in terms of actual content, transfer rumours is probably the answer. That's a tough one. Transfer windows more generally, when you work in this line of work, are tough, and they're intense, and it's difficult to switch off anyway. It's really difficult to switch off in the middle of a transfer window, because things can happen at 6 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night. It can be really difficult. So that is also a challenge, I think, just transfer windows generally.
I think, I can completely understand that. And I mean, the question, sort of the follow-up question I was going to have to that really was, talk to us about those sort of transfer window times. Is it, do you find yourself being busier, on transfer deadline day? Are you working the whole day? And I suppose really is where do you source your information for, for these rumours? Is it directly from the club, or do you hear snippets from other places?
When you do the job that I do, you hear loads from different people. You hear whispers all the time, and then it's just about making sure that you have people, places that you trust, and that you trust inherently to go with these stories. So I've got a few that when I get a message, or when I get a phone call and it's these people telling me something, I know that it's right. And I think that when you get into that place, that's a really good place to be in, because it's difficult and it's a minefield, and there's so much emphasis on it and trying to get stuff out there as quick as you can. I always think it's better to be second and right than first and wrong. I think that's always the way that I've gone about it, and it's better to make sure that things are done properly than getting half a story right or not getting something right at all. So yeah, it is a challenge, and the biggest challenge I think I probably have in this job is managing sort of family life and personal life with professional life. It's a very difficult one to switch off from, and it's a very difficult job to sort of step away from for any prolonged period of time, when that there's things going on in the background. And in terms of deadline days, they are particularly manic. I remember one where Norwich signed Danny Bart late, and they signed, I think Hwang was the other one, so it's a particularly successful transfer deadline day. But that was a case of being up at about 7 in the morning and not going to bed until about 2:30, I think, when they eventually confirmed it. So that's a lot. That's a long day. That's not an ordinary day, by the way. That is pretty extraordinary. I think Norwich played the next day away at Rotherham, so I was a little bit fuzzy-eyed for that game, which they lost. So that gives you an indication of what it can be like. And then, of course, I think there's always dialogue with the club. That I think there's maybe a little bit of a myth that perhaps we get stuff from the club. That's not the case. You can maybe use them at points for steers on things, or just sometimes to make sure that, or sometimes it's about having a story and just saying to them, look, I've got this story, I'm running this story. Is there anything you want to add, or context you want to add, or whatever? And a lot of the time the answer is no, but that's sort of a good channel of communication to have, I think. And one that has been, throughout my time, has been very up and down, but I think at the moment is in a really strong place. And I think more generally, widely, they've got a lot better at their communication. So yeah, it's manic, and you find yourself spinning plates. I mean, for example, yesterday as we record this, I had a day off, but there was some information that came to me about Grant Hanley. So then you find yourself probably doing a little bit and working a little bit. So that's probably the biggest challenge during these times, I think. Whereas in a regular season, you could kind of put the laptop down at 7 or 6, 7 and know that you're probably okay for the evening, just to sort of maybe, I don't know, keep an eye away from it for a little while. So that's definitely not the case this month. So yeah, maybe I should sort of end with an apology to my family who don't see or maybe don't feel like I'm 100% with them a lot of the time, and it's difficult to do that, I think, when you're in this job.
No, definitely. I fully appreciate that. So, question 9: if you could interview any past Norwich City figure, player, manager, or staff, who would it be, and what would you ask?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I mean, this is so my answer is I have kind of done this. So the answer would be, I think, Paul Lambert,
Right.
which I think would be the answer to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have spoken to Paul Lambert, but it was for a 10-minute sort of Zoom call, so it was very hard to have a proper conversation. But I think like most other people, you just love to know how everything at Norwich happened, and also now obviously post Ipswich, how all that unfolded as well. Yeah. So I think that would probably be. I think my question really would be what went wrong, what changed. I think that's probably the answer that everyone would like to know. So yeah, probably Paul Lambert. I would say that would be. Hopefully, I'm sure there'll be a book someday that opens up on it, but that's going to be a hell of a read when it emerges, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on that, and I don't know whether Paul Lambert would have a different opinion, but it was always around that time. It was him when he got obviously appointed at Norwich. It was him, Ian Culverhouse, and Gary Carter with the sort of the trio that come into Norwich at that time. And it seemed to be that those three worked really well together. But then when he lost, I think it was Culverhouse, or it might have been Carter as well, he didn't seem to do as well. It was almost like the famous sort of Brian Clough story when he lost. Was it Peter Taylor? His name wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
He never seemed to do as well as and it sometimes works like that, doesn't it? Where you have these sort of combination of staff and that works really well, but if you go sort of on your own, it's difficult. But yeah, that would be my opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's when you think back now that it was kind of in English football, it was him and Brendan Rodgers, weren't it? They were the sort of young coaching prodigies, and obviously Rodgers got the Liverpool job, Lambert got the Villa job, and that really felt like it was going to be those two competing towards the up end of the division at one stage, and obviously it panned out a little bit better for Brendan Rodgers than it did. I think you're right. Probably that deterioration of relationship with Ian Culverhouse is probably the one that I wonder if he reflects on now. He's not in management a little bit differently, but yeah, he's a fascinating figure, I think, not just because of what he did at Norwich, which is incredible, and in a way it is sad that that's been tainted in some way, because I grew up with that team. I absolutely loved that team and the people in it and the players in it, and obviously he was a key part of that. So the fact that it kind of feels like you reflect on that team now and you remove Paul Lambert from it, there is a little bit of sadness about that. And obviously subsequently it would just be nice to sort of find out what happened and maybe his view on it all now. So yeah, it's a fascinating guy, I think, Paul Lambert.
He was, and I funny enough, went for a job interview at Norwich at the training ground once, and didn't actually get to speak to him, but I saw him sort of in interaction with his staff, and I just at the time I was probably a little bit in awe of him, to be fair. But it was so interesting.
Yeah, he had that, didn't he? He had that sort of aura.
Yeah, 100%. And what he did for our club, and at the time when we were, didn't look like we were going anywhere in League One. We just lost 7-1 to his Colchester team. And I always maintain to this day that, after that game, Delia just got him in the boardroom and just put a blank checkbook in front of him and said, "Go on, name your price," because it was, he was sort of in charge 2 weeks later, wasn't he? But, I don't know. I mean, he's done he did really well for us. And I know he went to Ipswich and that tainted a lot of people's opinions of him, but I'll always be thankful for what he did for Norwich.
Yeah, likewise, and I hope with time, maybe the job he did at Portman Road will consolidate his feeling at Norwich City, because obviously he sent them down. But
sure.
I hope with time that maybe there can be some separation between the two, because that team that he led and the way that he led it and what they achieved was remarkable. Even if maybe he doesn't feel the same way about the club, I hope in time that there can be that sort of respect's maybe a bit strong, but definitely appreciation for what he did here, as was the case. I remember him coming back as Wolves manager and getting applause. I mean, he's never going to get that now, but just that general feeling, and hopefully, as time moves on, we'll be able to sort of reflect on that team with him back in it rather than probably what it is now, which is him very much not associated with it, which is again is a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, I know we've probably already covered this, to be honest. What's been your favourite match you've ever attended, either as a fan or on the job?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think as a fan, it would have been actually from that Paul Lambert title
Mm.
promotion winning campaign. Sorry, and it would have been the Derby win, the Simeon Jackson, as in against Derby, not the East Anglian Derby win,
Yes.
the one against Derby County where it was that late winner. You know, I'm not ashamed to say it, Jez. It's the only game that or probably only time in my life I've cried with happiness.
Oh, brilliant.
I was, I think, 11 at that time,
Mm.
so my emotions were all over the place anyway. But uh, when that went in, yeah, my reaction was just to burst into tears and with happiness. It was an incredible day, one I'll never forget. And yeah, I'm not sure it'll ever be replicated. The scenes and the pandemonium that
Mm.
sort of unfolded at Carrow Road that day. So it would be that one for me, I think.
Well, we nearly did against Coventry the other week, didn't it? When it back.
Yes. Yeah, and that again, that was even more enjoyable because I was sat next to Paddy, who obviously is a Coventry City fan.
Yeah.
So I had quite a unique perspective on that. Probably the only person inside Carrow Road sat next to a Coventry fan when it was of a Norwich persuasion, of course, who was sat next to a Coventry fan. There was a fair
Yeah.
few of them in that away end, but yeah, that was just remarkable, wasn't it?
That was superb. I mean, I'd have to agree with you. I think it was I'd always say that either the Wembley, the game with Middlesbrough, or the Man City game is what we mentioned earlier on, but the two for me. But there's been so many down the years, and we were talking to someone yesterday saying that I'm sure other clubs have it, but just Norwich City seem to do it in a certain way and always seem to get a certain win. And I always say to my non-supporting Norwich City mates, never bet on Norwich City because they'll let you down. If you think we're going to lose, they'll win, and the other way around. So it's it's great. And I've loved every second of my Norwich City supporting life.
Yeah, likewise, and I think just going to that back to that point, it's never, maybe Wembley was the exception of this, to be honest, but it never feels like it's a routine 2-0 comfortable victory that you can enjoy. It always feels like there's some jeopardy or some drama, and that's brilliant. But I think it's already taken probably a few years off my life, if I'm honest. And I'm sure you probably feel the same, Jez. So, which is brilliant as a fan. That's what you want. You want to cover those moments, and you want the force and late winners and all of that drama and ecstasy. And likewise, you don't want when you're on the receiving end on it. But that's kind of what it feels like it's been following Norwich City for the last 24, 25 years that I've done it.
Oh, great. So I mean, thanks so much for coming on, Connor. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and it's been good. So just finally, I mean, we'd sort of discussed it right at the start before we came on, but obviously talking to us about your next few days. Then what's the plan for sort of Sheffield United and then on to Leeds?
Yeah, busy is the answer. I mean, it's about 11 o'clock on Friday as we're recording this. So in a couple of hours, I'll be at Colney speaking to Johannes Hoftorup about, just getting his sort of pre-match feelings for Sheffield United. Obviously asking him about some of the transfer stuff that's unfolded over the last couple of days. Yeah. Then obviously this afternoon and the evening we'll be sort of writing some of that stuff up, and that's always quite busy. Hopefully get to watch a little bit of the game tonight, Burnley Sunderland, isn't it? And then in the morning it'll be pretty early start up to Bramall Lane. The game will happen and all of the usual coverage around that, then travel home. Monday for me is a day off. Tuesday will be a press conference, and then Wednesday back up for Leeds. So busy few days away. But look, that's what you live for. I think 2 really tough away tests. Probably like you, Jez. I'm really, maybe excited is the wrong word. I'm really I'm interested, intrigued to see how Norwich City deal with sort of 2 of the best teams in the division. So hopefully we're talking about them surprising us and getting a decent points haul over the next 2 games, rather than maybe what we expect, which is 2 defeats.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Are you confident enough to give us a prediction for the Sheffield United game?
Yeah, they don't concede a lot of goals, but they don't score many. So I think it will be tight, but I think they will probably edge it, maybe 2-0. I think they'll probably score. Norwich will then commit a load of men forward. They'll score in the break pretty late on and seal it up. So yeah, I'll go for a 2-0, but hopefully one where Norwich City do themselves, justice by putting in a decent performance. I think that would be really encouraging.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think it'll be 1 or 2-0. I think Chris Wilder, that's the way he sets his teams up, isn't it? To frustrate. So, yeah, I can't disagree with that, to be honest. I think that'll be where we're at. So, well, thanks once again.
No, pleasure, mate. A pleasure, and keep up the good work. I mean, we mentioned the fan media. This is obviously a key part of it. So, yeah, it's brilliant what you're doing, and yeah, keep up the good work.
No, I really appreciate that. And, if I can help you out in any way in the future, please do get in touch.
Top man, will do.
Thanks, Connor. Just for everyone else listening,
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Barclay. Thanks so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can also catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you've got any questions, stories, or topics you'd like me to cover, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, on the Ball City.